Hello, everybody. This is Ryan from my Try Running Programs, and we are into week 4 of the Hal Higdon Personal Best Marathon Training Program. And really, nothing too crazy in this week comparative to week 3. Really, all we're switching out is the 35-minute tempo run for a 35-minute fartlek run and the 6-mile long run into a 7-mile long run. Otherwise, we maintain the same mixture of 3 and 4 mile easy runs and a 4 by hill workout to round out the completion of the entire week. So in this particular case for me, this week came out to roughly around 29 miles, in fact, 29 on the dot. And it took me a little more than 4 hours to run that, and about 630 feet of elevation gain given where I run. And for those of you who are probably less aware, I do a lot of my running kind of in a valley here in the California area and then also along the coastline. So I get more elevation when I'm doing more coastal running, but a lot of flat running where I live. So for the first 3 runs of the week, all super easy. I won't waste your time on those. Very basic 3 mile easy run to start the week, 8:48 pace, followed by a little bit under 4 miles. It was something that kind of came up in my schedule. So I had to cut that run just a touch bit short, but kept that at 9 minutes per mile. And then he ran the third one actually even slower at 3 miles and 9:11 per pace. So very, very simple, easy running. The first kind of real speed session of the week was this 6.25 mile fartlek run that averaged out at 8 minutes per pace. And to go into this a little bit deeper, kind of how I got the pacing for those who are less aware of my videos, if this is your first time watching my channel, the way that I map out fartlek runs are pretty simple. I do it in a ladder style, essentially 1 minute hard, then 1 minute easy, then 2 minutes hard, so on and so forth, up to the 5 minute maximum. And then I start to redo those reps again. So in this particular session, I did 1 through 5 and then 1 and 2 a second time. So that's how I ended up getting all of my work time in. So with that being said, my first mile was my warm up, simple 9 minute mile just to get the legs going. And then from there, did pick up a lot faster as we went. The reps effectively got a little bit faster as I went to start. So I started off relatively slow, right around the 6:30 pace for that first 1 minute. Then the second 2 minute rep kept it more in the higher 5 range. So somewhere between 5, even low 6s to about 540-ish top end pace on that. And then in the third rep, because it's uphill, this one is kind of a throwaway rep. I knew it was going to be a little bit slower. So this was in the 7s and 6s. Pretty wide gap there, given that it is going up some mildly significant grade. And then the third rep is another one that, or fourth rep, I should say, is another one where you have to be a little careful here because it looks like I went much, much faster. And that is somewhat true because it did kind of top out, I believe, at around 5:39 pace for this particular rep for 3 minutes. The difficulty here in that is that I'm going downhill, so it kind of gives that away. Really the biggest rep is the 5 minute rep, and this is something that I kept around about the 6:15 to 6:40 range. And wasn't particularly thrilled with that rep. I feel like this is where I want to get a little bit faster. There are a lot of time trials in this program, one of which I'll report on relatively soon. And that is some more longer sustained kind of fast running. And for now, I feel like that's the weak part of my running kind of repertoire, if you will. Actually covering the distances don't bother me, but it's covering them with some pace where I struggle a little bit. And so as I'm continuing to do these fartlek sessions, I kind of need to mentally map out for myself that the 1 and 2 minute reps, they're important, but they're probably not shouldn't really be the highlights of my session. When I'm reporting these exercises out to you all, I'd much rather report a really extensive, strong 5 minute rep than a bunch of really successful 1 and 2 minute reps, because those are just not as replicable to the type of marathon running that all of us are doing, right? So overall, a pretty good session. You can see that the actual work miles, really kind of edged between everywhere from 7 minutes all the way up to 8 minutes. It just depended on how long those rest repetitions are. So some of those miles end up looking faster than they really are. But overall, a pretty good session for the day. For the second speed session of the week, this was a hill rep session, 4 by hill rep session that I ran over here along the coastline as I normally do. And there's a lot of good here. There's a lot of bad here. Let's start with the good. In terms of the early reps, similarly, this was something where I think the early session starts And to explain my course to folks, really once I get down to about this coastal trail area, this is where I truly start doing the hill reps. So I have about a 1.1 mile warm up, and then I have a kind of a longer round, quarter mile or so first rep. And that's also somewhat true of the second rep. The third rep would normally be quite short. This time I tried to have a couple longer hill reps that kind of I blew up on, to be honest with you, as I got further into the session. And so it's going to make me kind of redo how I do this in the future. But in terms of reporting the reps for now, that first rep, I kept it in a mixture of around the mid fives to low sixes, handled it pretty well. Then you get a little bit of a rest, and then you go right back into it again, and also kept that rep pretty fast, as you can see, right around everywhere between low sixes to kind of high mid fives or so. So once again, a pretty good repetition for the first two and very exciting, showing that I have some good upper end speed. The issue just is the same with the Fartlek. The issue here right now is I know I have the upper end speed and I want to run it. The problem is I just don't have the leg strength to sustain it and really the aerobic strength to sustain it. And so that's kind of the give and take right now with my training is it's really exciting to run fast, but I have to kind of be patient and realize that I think I'll be a lot faster 4, 6, 8 weeks from now than I will be right this minute. And I have to kind of wait for all of these training adaptations to kick in so that I can run faster. So there's a little bit of learning that needs to take place here mentally to kind of model out what I want to do. But overall, I think at least the first two reps went pretty well. Then the third rep was meant to be up this longer street here. And you can see I started off trying to run it everywhere from the high sixes to the, mid sixes. And there were some spikes there of a little bit faster, but really struggled to maintain this particular rep. And so the issue ended up being is I had to kind of stop, take a little breather, and then try to finish out the rep. And I really couldn't do it. And so from there, I kind of tried once again to pick it up for the fourth rep, which would be up this longer, kind of about half mile stretch here, and just didn't have it in my legs. So I was tired, pretty beat. Overall, I felt like this was kind of a mixed session for me. The first two reps were so great that it was hard to totally throw it away mentally, but the back two reps of these longer kind of half mile stretches, my legs just weren't ready for it on that day particularly, especially with how fast I had ran my first two reps. So lesson kind of learned of how to, sustain a better, more consistent session. But I still think it's beneficial in the long run to get this type of running in. So overall, not a bad run, but just one where I think it could have been better. Followed that up with a 7 mile long run, which is what basically this week calls for, in a pretty consistent session. You can see outside of the first mile being at 9 minutes, once again, kind of just your standard warm-up mile, really kept everything between kind of low 8 to mid 8 pace. Felt really good, felt consistent all throughout the run. Legs felt pretty strong. I have been dealing a little bit, though much better, I will admit now, dealing a little bit with some back issues in the mid back, and that's been always the injury that takes me out for time. I haven't had to hang up the shoes at all. In fact, like I said, I feel a lot better now. So I think it was my back getting used to all of this speed work and this, kind of elevation change type running. I feel way better now, 2 to 3 weeks on from these runs than I did that particular day. So there is a little bit of give and take in the back end on this with that particular kind of injury being in my mind. I was probably a little afraid to go too hard too often. But overall, I feel like this type of long run is exactly what I want to see. Very consistent, simple miles. They don't need to be terribly fast, just need to go and get those miles under your legs. So with that being said, for the week, overall wasn't the most exciting when we look at our VO2 max. It actually was a drop of about a point on average. The previous week was about 52 in terms of the average out, smoothed out data. This one was a 51, so not quite as good as the previous week, but certainly not bad either. So something to, be a positive of. The goal was originally to get my VO2 max hopefully to around 51 by the end of May. And I know kind of it gives it away here on my screen that I'm obviously above that number right now, and have been consistently improving my VO2 max over the last couple of weeks. But overall, at that time, it was a pretty good week for where I was at. Now, in terms of the effective marathon shape, once again, I'm kind of giving this away a little bit, but if we go back to the previous weeks here, to about 2 weeks back, it would have estimated by the end of this week that I would have been in about 309 shape or about 714 per mile. Do I think that's doable? Yes and no. I think realistically, once again, if you go back and you look at my CIM video, that was about on average what I was running, maybe a little bit faster than what I was running on that particular race day before I blew up. So once again, I don't think it's top end speed that's my issue. It's miles under feet, and it's getting really comfortable with running harder for longer sustained periods of time. A lot of this is mentality. It's also building up that kind of mental fortitude to run fast. And that can be difficult to do when we're this early in the training cycle because you don't want to get hurt. You don't want to kind of overtrain. There's a lot going on there mentally that makes you think, am I doing the right things right now? But overall, once again, if the data is pointing that you're getting faster, yeah, that's kind of good enough for me. So overall, once again, a pretty good week in terms of training. A couple more exciting weeks to share and a couple more exciting workouts to share as we get further along the training program. Hopefully your training is going well. And if you have any questions about the Hal Higdon Personal Best Program, be more than happy to answer them. So take care of yourself and we'll see you in future videos.